Legislative amendment related to overseas lawyers taking part in national security-related hearings. Surgical lights in 12 operating rooms in the city's public hospitals found to be problematic. And Joe Biden makes an unannounced visit to Ukraine. Hello and welcome to TVB News. The government will amend an ordinance requiring courts to secure the chief executive's permission for overseas lawyers to stand in national security-related trials. This as the city's top court earlier approved the admission of a British lawyer to represent jailed Next Digital founder Jimmy Lai in his landmark political trial. Jackie Lin reports.
Earlier, the Court of Final Appeal ruled in favor of former media mogul Jimmy Lai for him to be represented by British King's Counsel Tim Owen in the closely watched national security trial. With that, the SAR government sought Beijing's interpretation of the national security law on whether overseas lawyers who do not have full qualifications to practice in the SAR are allowed to take part in such cases. The Standing Committee of the National People's Congress ultimately confirmed the overseas counsels should obtain a granting certificate issued by the chief executive before being hired to work on local national security cases. In a proposal submitted to the legislature today, the government said it will amend the Legal Practitioners Ordinance. Currently, foreign lawyers have to acquire the court's permission to stand in Hong Kong cases. After the amendment, these lawyers must acquire the approving certificate from the city leader when handling national security-related cases, whether they're of civil or criminal proceedings. The chief executive would determine whether the foreign barrister's role, practice, and conduct would not compromise national security. The same procedure would apply to any other trials involving elements of national security. The government will present the bill to the Legislative Council in the first or second quarter this year. Last Friday, jailed media tycoon Jimmy Lai filed an appeal to the High Court, asking it to declare the legitimacy for him to seek defense from Tim Owen, so Beijing's interpretation won't affect the earlier ruling from the top court. Or, if not approved, Lai would seek to obtain a certificate from the chief executive to decide whether the British counsel could represent him in court. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
A set of surgical lights fell from the ceiling of an operating room at United Christian Hospital and hit an anesthetic assistant 2 days ago. Subsequent inspections found problems with surgical lights of the same model at 12 operating theaters in the city's public hospitals. Secretary for Health Lo Chung-Mao called this severe and unacceptable and has demanded the hospital authorities strictly follow up on the matter. Sharon Tang has more.
The surgical lights in question at United Christian Hospital, according to the hospital authority, have been in use for about 11 years. Maintenance work was carried out just 2 months ago. Preliminary findings show the collapse of the lights had something to do with the condition of the screws. Speaking on a radio program, the hospital authority's senior engineering manager Yun Pak Leung said maintenance workers did look at the condition of the screws 2 months ago and will look into what went wrong. The hospital authority has completed inspecting surgical lights of the same model at all public hospitals in the city and found a total of 12 sets of lights having similar problems. The authority has commissioned an expert team to look into the case, adding the screws may have loosened because of metal fatigue. No patients were present in the operation room at the time of the incident, and no other medical staff members were injured. The bigger question is, what will happen if there is a patient underneath the surgical lights?
There's no feeling at that time when we do the surgery. If the weight of the equipment is 100 pounds, and then the falling down depends on the height. From there, it's only less than 0.7 meter. The weight will be 100 to 130.
Private hospitals are also on high alert tonight. The Hong Kong Sanatorium and Hospital said there are operation theatres equipped with lights of the same model. It added safety checks have been completed and no surgical operations have been affected. St. Teresa's Hospital also procured the same brand of surgical lights 2 years ago through the same contractor, albeit a different model. Preliminary checks did not spot any problems, and the contractor has been asked to inspect the hospital on Wednesday. Tony Ling, president of the Hong Kong Public Doctors Association, said this is an unprecedented incident which inevitably threatens the safety to patients and medical staff alike. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Meantime, some schools in the city faced a lunch crisis today as Lunchbox contractor Lunch & Star temporarily halted its services. This after some students reported feeling sick last week after consuming food supplied by the company. Schools came up with their own solutions. A school in Qingyi decided to host a family cooking event to provide nutritious meals for its students. Timothy Lee tells us more.
A crowd of little chefs hard at work. They are all part of a two-day event organized by the Yanchai Hospital Chutang Hokwang Primary School in Qingyi. Students joined forces with parents to prepare lunch for students in the school. Since the temporary operational shutdown of Lunch & Star, which is a subsidiary of the Café de Coral fast food chain, more than 100,000 students in the city have been affected. But some students here said they learned some important lessons thanks to the lunchbox crisis. This student learned to appreciate her meals a lot more and discovered that cooking is a really difficult task. While this student said he wants to become better at cooking so that he can lift some of his mother's household burdens. The school also expressed its appreciation for the parents' advice and efforts that facilitated today's event.
They are very helpful, especially the PTA, the chairman of our PTA, right? They have many opinions, and for the director, very support for these activities. Today is a successful event, okay? Without their support, I don't think it's take it so easy. We will carry on today and tomorrow until they have the latest announcements for us.
Last Thursday, Lunch & Star said it had received reports from schools about their students feeling unwell after having meals supplied by the lunchbox provider. Despite putting a stop to its operations, another primary school in Tuen Mun reported 3 of its students fell sick after eating the contractor's food, with one having been sent to hospital. For further investigation, the school set up a task force to perform daily inspections of the contractor's lunch hour services and the quality of its lunchboxes.
Today, students can enjoy lunchboxes containing nutritional ingredients such as chicken, zucchini, and white rice, prepared by the school, parents, and the students themselves. The school said if the lunchbox contractor fails to provide the meals by Wednesday, they will continue to work with parents to prepare healthy meals for the children. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Overseas, U.S. President Joe Biden made an unannounced trip to Ukraine today to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, a gesture of solidarity that comes days before the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion. Biden announced an additional $500 million in U.S. assistance and reassured Ukraine of American and allied support. The U.S. president is also heading to Poland, hoping his visit from February 20th to 22nd can rally European allies to maintain their support for Kyiv after the Munich Security Conference. Nazvi Karim reports.
More than a year ago, U.S. President Joe Biden warned of a Russian invasion of Ukraine as Moscow amassed troops on the border and the world remained largely skeptical. Ahead of the first anniversary of the February 24th invasion, Biden is vindicated, but also aiming to rally NATO allies for an expected major push by Russian President Vladimir Putin's forces in a bid to regain the upper hand. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is pressing allies to speed up delivery of pledged weapon systems and is calling on the West to deliver fighter jets to Ukraine, something that Biden to date has declined to do. Washington has given tens of billions of US dollars worth of advanced weapons, aid and finances to help Kyiv withstand a Russian assault that would have likely wiped most of Ukraine off the map had it not been for American and European help.
We know the next weeks and months are going to be difficult and critical, especially for their armed forces, and the United States is going to continue to stand by them.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his forces are inflicting extraordinarily significant losses on Russian troops in the eastern Donbas region. He said Russia continues to suffer losses in Bakhmut, a strategic city they've been targeting since July, and surrounding towns. Russian forces are reportedly fighting house-to-house battles in trying to encircle the city. Ukraine troops, though, have defended doggedly, but at a great human cost on both sides, according to reports. Russian casualties fighting for Bakhmut include thousands from the mercenary Wagner group headed by Yevgeny Prigozhin. Ramzan Kadyrov, the Chechenian leader who is a close ally of President Vladimir Putin, said he was planning on forming a group similar to that of Prigozhin's. Both men have previously criticized the tactics and performances of the Russian military. In a Telegram post, Kadyrov said Wagner had achieved impressive results and that private military companies were a necessity. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
China today urged the United States to stop deflecting blame and spreading disinformation after Antony Blinken warned Beijing against providing arms to Russia in the Ukraine war. Blinken said he told China's top diplomat Wang Yi during talks in Munich there would be real consequences if China were to provide lethal support to Moscow.
We are concerned that China is considering supporting Russia's war effort in Ukraine with lethal assistance, something that we're watching very, very closely. As I also said, and as President Biden said, going back many months when the aggression first took place, and he spoke to President Xi Jinping, he told him at that point that there would be real consequences in our own relationship were China to provide lethal assistance to Russia. And I'm not going to lay out what the consequences would be, but I think China understands what's at risk.
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin pushed back against the criticism, saying it is the U.S. who kept providing weapons to the battlefield, not China. He added the U.S. is in no position to tell China what to do, and Beijing would never accept finger-pointing and conditions for China-Russia relations. China has refused to criticize Russia or even describe its actions in Ukraine as an invasion. At the same time, it insists that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all nations must be upheld. Still ahead, the U.S. announces a further $100 million in aid to help with earthquake relief in Turkey. Macau and the mainland to mutually recognize driving licenses later this year. And in Tokyo, animal lovers say goodbye to giant panda Xiang. Welcome back. The United States is giving Turkey a further $100 million in aid to help with earthquake relief. This as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Turkey on Sunday for an official visit and discussions on how Washington can further assist. Rescue efforts in most provinces devastated by the earthquakes 2 weeks ago have been scaled down with little hope of finding any more survivors. As David Garrett reports, the death toll across Turkey and Syria stands at more than 45,000 and is still expected to grow.
America's top diplomat tells the world the United States will support its ally for as long as it takes. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken met for talks with Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan. The pair posed for photographers in Ankara. Earlier, Blinken and Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu were in the air to get a view of how bad it is on the ground. They viewed the wreckage of crumpled buildings and areas flattened. Blinken started his visit on Sunday and landed in Incirlik Air Base in what was his first visit to the NATO ally since taking office 2 years ago. President Joe Biden had already pledged $85 million for Turkey and Syria days after the earthquake hit, but now they will do more.
This is going to be a long-term effort. The search and rescue, unfortunately, is coming to an end. The recovery operation is on, and then there'll be a massive rebuilding effort.
Blinken then assisted the armed services who are coordinating the US relief effort in southern Turkey.
The most important thing right now is to get assistance to people who need it, to get them through the winter, and to get them back on their feet. But simply put, the United States is here. We stand strongly with the people of Turkey.
The search for survivors is almost over. Rescue work in 9 of the 11 provinces hit by the quake has ended. The survivors are grappling with how to rebuild their lives. In Hatay, 30% of the buildings have collapsed, and it is estimated another 30% have suffered damage, making them difficult to live in. Volunteers are tying red balloons to the debris to mark the death of every child. The man behind the project is Ogun Okor. He said he wanted to fulfill a last duty to what he calls their angels. We want to reach all parts of the city until we reach every home of the children who lost their lives, he added. The number of balloons is too large to count, but they are already in the thousands. David Garrett, TVB News.
Starting on May 16th, the Mainland and Macau will begin mutual recognition of driving licenses, a measure that is expected to benefit more than 200,000 drivers. Permanent residents of Macau can exchange their driving license for the Mainland one without taking a driving test, as long as they provide necessary information, including ID cards and photos. However, the new measure will not extend to non-permanent residents, those carrying learners and probationary licenses, or international driving permits. Macau authorities stressed that the mutual recognition scheme does not mean all mainland vehicles are allowed to enter the enclave. And Japanese animal lovers openly wept as giant panda Xiang made her final public appearance at a zoo in Tokyo. Around 2,500 people won a lottery to be there before Xiang heads to China. The panda was born in Tokyo and will head to the Chinese mainland with 3 others with a hope of finding a suitable mate. And here is who the crowds came to see, Xiang munching on some bamboo. She was always due to head to China once she reached 2 years old, but the move was delayed because of COVID. China maintains ownership over giant pandas, but sends them abroad as a gesture of goodwill. Some of these Tokyo people say they hope to travel to China to see their beloved animal again. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Pearl Magazine is up shortly. Bye for now.